This is the beginning of the third session on the Apocrypha, or the Deuterocanonicals. And today, or this session, we're going to be finishing the text, starting with the book of Baruch, or Baruch, English pronunciation. And we'll end with the books of Maccabees. As with a lot of books in the Apocrypha, and actually a couple of them in the canonical world, this book is written as if it's from one period of history. That is, it would be around the time of Jeremiah, and Jeremiah occurs simply, well, not even simply, it's a bit more complex than that. He belongs to the period immediately preceding the Babylonian captivity, which occurs or begins to occur in 597, and Jeremiah goes on to live through and record some things about the exile. He himself goes into exile. Anyway, that's what the book looks like. I think of those things in brown paper wrappings. That is, they conceal something that is forbidden or dangerous, and they look innocuous. So there are a whole series of books, both in the Hebrew Bible, actually in the New Testament as well, and in the Apocrypha especially, that purport to be from one early, so therefore safe period in history. But what they're actually talking about and written in is a much later period. Anyway, Baruch is one of those. So it pretends to be from the time of Jeremiah, but it's actually coming from a period that's much later, as you see there on the slide. And like Esdras from the last time, Baruch also has a couple of incarnations. So some people call this book the only Baruch in the Apocrypha, first Baruch, because there's a second and a third, which we won't worry about at all. The name goes back, as it says, to Baruch, who in the book of Jeremiah is named as Jeremiah's secretary. So in that fiction, we're back in the Babylonian period when the people were taken off into exile. The first temple is destroyed. The dynasty comes to a screeching halt. Other things happen. It was a period of history for the Jewish people that Jewish historians compare with the Holocaust of the 40s of the 20th century. It was that bad. Anyway, it's purporting to come from a period that's much later, and the period from which it comes is the Seleucid period. What Baruch is espousing here is what we often call the old Deuteronomic religion. And that's the catechism from early in the biblical period. It's called Deuteronomic because in the book of Deuteronomy, there's a particular section near the end when Moses, summing up the last speech of his life, some call the book of Deuteronomy the last will and testament of Moses. At any rate, he talks about, he sums up the tenets of the Sinai covenant and talks about these things as the way of the Lord. This is the way you ought to act if you're a righteous, faithful, at that point, Hebrew. And he stands on top of a mountain and shouts the good things that will occur to you if you continue to follow this way. On the other hand, there are curses that accrue to you if you violate all of this. Anyway, Baruch is in that vein. For those of us in lectionary-based denominations, we hear Psalm 1 and pray Psalm 1 several times. In fact, almost more frequently than any other psalm in the Psalter. Um, for those of us who are Eucharistically based in the Eucharist on Sundays, that psalm has the same philosophy as the book of Baruch. The first 3/4 of the psalm are taken up with the righteous and what constitutes being righteous, and you're going to be rewarded. The second part of it, the last quarter, is about those who don't follow the way of righteousness and are doomed. Anyway, Baruch is all about that. Although, because we're in a much later period, Moses didn't know about the wisdom tradition. Baruch says one way to avoid the curses of the covenant, to get away from your apostasy, is to repent, which means to seek wisdom. And wisdom for Baruch and some of the other apocryphal writers equals the Torah. So if you pay attention to the Torah, the original teachings of Moses, you're on the right track. Interestingly enough, the early Christians got very interested in this text because, not unlike some of the other writings, certainly like canonical Proverbs, wisdom is personified as someone who comes to earth to teach and live. Now, in the Bible, it's a woman. Christians saw it as a type of Christ. So their thinking is, in part, that Baruch is actually doing a kind of Christ before Christ. That is, Jesus is the wisdom on earth who's come to teach and to live the way of the Lord so that other people can emulate him, which is true for the Christian dispensation. It simply was not the case for Baruch and company.